Hi, fight fans, and welcome to another video.
I'm gonna be real. You got this shit handed to you. You got Dana White privilege.
Just like in many other spheres and jobs, the UFC is an organization where some athletes are valued more than others, and for some reason, they enjoy special treatment from the company.
Rampage used to call me Dana, it's good to be white.
Although some people call this Dana White privilege, it has nothing to do with race or social stance, but rather with the fighter's popularity, star power, and the ability to make people interested in watching your fights. The favoritism by the UFC president, Dana White, can be noticed in many ways. A few common things to point out are undeserved title shots, protecting an athlete by not letting them fight a formidable opponent, or giving them winnable matches to climb the ranks rapidly. We will look at some of the biggest Dana White privilege moments and athletes that enjoyed special and undeserved treatment by the organization. Brock Lesnar. Before signing with the UFC, Brock Lesnar was a WWE star with millions of fans behind his back. Although he fought only once in MMA against Mi Soon Kim in 2007, the UFC president believed that Lesnar possessed what it takes to fight in the most elite MMA organization in the world. Instead of giving him a warm-up bout and letting him fight on the undercard, Lesnar was scheduled to face the top UFC contender Frank Mir in the UFC 81 co-main event. Brock lost that bout via knee bar. Then he was scheduled against Heath Herring, who had a record of 2-2 in the UFC. Lesnar won that bout via unanimous decision, but instead of letting him fight a few more times to climb the rankings, the WWE star was given an immediate title shot. This was only his second fight in the organization. He lost one of them, and just like that, he was scheduled to fight the aged Randy Couture for the UFC heavyweight title. Regardless that Minotaur Nogueira was the interim champ and all the other top contenders who deserved it more. Lesnar's popularity and star power were enough reasons to give him special treatment, but considering that he is a white boy and jacked, he should have just dealt with it. Michael Chandler. Who gets a chance for the UFC title with 0 prior fights in the organization? Michael Chandler does. On September 17, 2020, it was announced that the Bellator star Michael Chandler had signed a contract with the UFC. Only a month later, he served as a backup for a title bout between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje at UFC 254. None of these fighters pulled off, and Chandler went home without a fight, but then he was scheduled to face the top lightweight contender Dan Hooker. Although he won that bout spectacularly via first-round knockout, climbing up to the top is not an easy task, and no one should expect that Chandler should fight a few other top contenders before getting into the title picture mix. Nevertheless, the reality was different, considering that Chandler was scheduled to face Charles Oliveira for the lightweight title in his next fight after only one fight in the UFC. The American gave Oliveira a run for his money moment in the first round but lost the fight via second-round TKO. Ronda Rousey. Let's not discredit what Ronda has done for the sport. She is the reason why women's MMA was implemented in the UFC. 10 years ago, speaking to Dana White about women fighting in the UFC was equivalent to offering a devoted Muslim a proper 12 Irish whiskey.
When are we going to see women in the UFC, man?
Never.
Never? Never?
His argument was reasonable. He didn't want to see beautiful females punching each other in the face. But then he met Ronda Rousey and immediately realized that she might be the golden goose for the promotion. And he was right. Ronda Rousey became one of the biggest stars in UFC history. The company knew that if she lost even once, she might lose value, and therefore they were constantly giving hundreds of excuses on why she should not fight Cris Cyborg, who was widely considered the scariest female fighter at the time. Dana White went so far that he even called Cyborg the Wanderlei Silva in dress and heels, mocking her that she uses steroids. However, protecting Ronda from fighting Cyborg was not enough, and her championship reign was stopped by Holm, who pulled off one of the biggest upsets in MMA history by knocking Ronda out via high kick. Nevertheless, the following year, instead of giving her a warm-up fight to rebound from the loss, Rowdy was given an immediate title shot against Amanda Nunes. If that wasn't enough, they allowed Ronda not to participate in the obligatory media days, and all the promotion of the fight was about her and her return. Amanda Nunes responded in the best way by obliterating Ronda in the first round, and with that, she closed Rousey's retirement door forever. By the way, if you enjoyed our video so far, please make sure to press that like button. Holm. Speaking of Holm, winning against the most prominent female star in UFC history brought her fame and popularity and the Dana White privilege with it. The preacher's daughter lost her belt in her first title defense against Miesha Tate and was unanimously defeated in her next bout against Valentina Shevchenko. Losing 2 fights in a row probably leads to fighting a lesser opponent. Still, with the victory against Ronda on her resume, Holm was given special treatment by granting her a title shot for the UFC Women's Featherweight Championship in her featherweight debut. Not only had she lost 2 fights in a row, but this was her first bout in the featherweight division, and yet the UFC thought giving her a title shot would be a fair deal? In a close fight against Germaine de Randamie, she lost the bout via unanimous decision, and that was her 3rd loss in a row. Holly was back at bantamweight and beat Beth Correa in the next bout, and the UFC thought that she deserved a title shot at featherweight again, this time against Chris Cyborg. Although Holm won in the last fight against Correa, let's not forget that she was 1-3 in her previous 4 contests and had a record of 0-1 at featherweight, yet the UFC gave her another chance to win the title. The preacher's daughter lost the fight, and then won in her next bout against the debuting fighter Megan Anderson. So what should be next for Holly after beating an upcoming fighter? Another title shot against Amanda Nunes for the bantamweight belt. Just how significant is her victory against Ronda Rousey? Is there a better example of favoritism in the UFC than this? To put it in perspective, Leon Edwards had to win 9 fights in a row to be granted a chance for the title. On the other hand, Holly Holmes fought 3 times for a UFC belt in 2 years. Chael Sonnen. Including Chael in this list is quite controversial, considering that the gangster from West Lynn, Oregon never lost a round, let alone a fight.
And I've never lost a round of fighting in my life, let alone the UFC. I've never lost anywhere. I fought 48 men. I've never lost a round. Never had a round go against me.
According to Sonnen, besides Khabib Nurmagomedov, he is another example of a fighter who retired undefeated and undisputed.
The real champion sits before you today, undefeated and undisputed. Well, I'm back in Portland, and I'm still undefeated, exactly as I had predicted for you guys.
Unlike the other fighters on this list, Chael's confidence and the ability to talk on the microphone gained him the Dana White privilege as he managed to convince the world that he is the best fighter in the UFC who can dethrone dominant champions like Anderson Silva and Jon Jones. Sonnen was the godfather of trash talk long before Conor McGregor even appeared on the UFC's radar. His intelligence and charisma to talk granted him many undeserved opportunities, like getting title shots in 2 different divisions.
Tito always says I'm using my mouth to get my opportunities. The only person I know that made money using their mouth is his ex-wife.
The problem with Chael was that his skills did not match his performances in the octagon. Still, nevertheless, it was enough to present him with opportunities like nobody else in UFC before. On August 7, 2010, the undefeated gangster fought Anderson Silva for the UFC middleweight title. After dominating the fight for 5 rounds, the Spider pulled off a beautiful submission that forced the bad guy to tap. However, in his mind, he was still undefeated because he allegedly thought that by tapping, he only lost a round and not the contest as a whole. After winning the next 2 fights and doing tons of trash talk in the process, Sonnen was given another shot at the UFC middleweight title but lost that fight again. Now, here's where it gets confusing. Chael Sonnen lost in his last bout, but for some reason, the UFC granted him another immediate title shot, this time at light heavyweight against Jon Jones. The question that comes to mind is, how can Chael be granted a shot at Jon's belt when he hasn't fought in the light heavyweight division since 2005? The American gangster did not doubt that he deserved it.
I haven't
That's a long
lost
time.
at light
You
heavyweight
haven't
since
lost.
2005.
Okay.
Longest undefeated streak in the company today, 8 years.
Although he lost the fight against Jones, Sonnen managed to break Jon Jones' toe in the process. Some would say that Chael enjoyed special treatment, but at the end of the day,
when you're the greatest fighter in the world today, they got a name for you. They don't call you a great fighter, they call you Chael Sonnen. Beat me, if you can.
Conor McGregor. The Notorious is the biggest superstar in the UFC history, and the first UFC double champ that simultaneously held titles in 2 different divisions. However, at the beginning of 2016, he lost to Diaz. After avenging his loss against the Stockton native by winning a close majority decision victory, the Irishman fought for the second belt by the end of the same year. According to many, including Khabib, this was a concrete example of Dana White's privilege.
Beginning of the year, he tapped like chicken. End of the year, he fight for the title. Crazy.
McGregor won the second belt against Eddie Alvarez, and with that, he held belts at featherweight and lightweight without having any intention to defend them. After 2 years of absence, he returned to the UFC. Instead of having a warm-up fight, he was immediately given a title shot at the lightweight title against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Not to mention the bus attack and endless incidents the Notorious was involved in, only to get away without any real consequences. Dana White always had a soft spot for Conor, and nobody could deny that, But at the end of the day, one could argue that the Notorious deserved everything that the UFC granted him, considering the millions of fans he brought into the sport. And what do you guys think? Do you believe some fighters are treated better than others by the UFC? Who do you think enjoys the Dana White privilege the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you would like to watch more videos like this, please make sure to like and subscribe.